Just going through some of my emails here. Sometimes I get emails from people and they ask questions, what I think about World War III, when it's going to happen and stuff like that. And I always say it's going to be a wild card flash in the pan thing. It's impossible to predict because of so many variations going on. So I guess somebody wrote a really good question. And this was a debate. I didn't watch the debate here, but I'm just going with the question that was posed here, I guess. Question, will there be a World War III? Answer, battle. I don't know who put this answer, but battles, yes. War, no. There will be skirmishes, genocides in African countries, honor killings in Islamic countries. The U.S. bunting its nose into the Middle East, civil wars within countries, etc. But there will be no World War III. Countries are too interconnected because of imports, exports, trade, and most importantly, multinational corporations. Most large countries are aware of effects of nuclear warfare and will refrain from mutual assured destruction. The smaller countries that don't seem to have that awareness, North Korea, Iran, will continue posturing, but will be allowed to mobilize by global community. Will not be allowed to mobilize by global community. Then the follow-up question, if that's what the other guy's saying, he goes, if this guy isn't right about World War III, why is he not? This is the question to me. Otherwise, is your position simply, let's bear in mind even the worst possibility of our mental and practical persuasions or precautions? Okay, so this is fair enough. Is he right or is he wrong? Well, I'm not saying he's right or is he's wrong. I'm saying if I were to give you a date and time, I wouldn't believe me. Why? Because there's too many variables. What he is saying is there's no possibility, chance, so to speak, because of trade. Well, if that was the case, World War I shouldn't happen, World War II shouldn't happen, the Boer War shouldn't happen. All that stuff always comes back down to trade, territory, and always usually comes down to money. Almost every one of them comes down to money. North Korea shouldn't have happened. Vietnam shouldn't have happened. Because there is trade, maybe not directly countries, but there's countries that have mutual. Let's look at what's going on right now with Ukraine. You know, behind the scenes, if you were to, this whole thing over the euro, and I don't have a formed opinion on it. I think Ukraine is right now in a rock and a hard place. I don't think they're going to benefit going from the euro, but yet, they're not benefiting from Russia either. But what's the real tug of war that's going on here? Well, same thing, is if they go with the euro, well, guess what? You'll see missile systems surrounding Russia in the Ukraine. You see what I mean? Same like Turkey. Turkey's an ally of the States. But do they really benefit from the States? The people don't. Not really. You know what I mean? So that's how you have to look at it. So that's the multi-nation building thing, sure. But at the end of the day, will there be a World War III? Well, here's the things we have to factor in. Worldwide, we have dumbed-down societies everywhere. We have authoritarian built into the system worldwide. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. You could be in a Stone Age country, or you can be in the most modern space age, high-tech country. You have authoritarian built in. So if you're one form of repression, and you really have two camps here. You have people that are fighting the system, and people that are working for the system. System being, the government versus the people, and that's always the way it works. There's no difference in history, 10,000 years ago to now. There's no difference. From the times of Hannibal to now, there's no difference. Caesar, no difference. It's all the same. You have your people that are the elites in power, and they'll always exploit the resources and the energy of the people that are not in power. We know this. But would they ever take it to that level? Well, again, understanding that 1 in every 10 or 1 in every 25 people on this planet is a form of psychopath. That's one huge factor. That narcissistic attitude of my way or no way at all is eventually going to fall into the hands of somebody who has their finger on the button. Yeah, to me, Kim Il-jung, the younger, not Kim Il-jung, but Kim Il-jung, or Kim Young-jun, whatever, I always get his name wrong, but the new dictator in North Korea, okay? This guy, okay, is soulless. This guy, this guy had his ex-girlfriend, assassinated. When you think about it like that, okay, this is a guy, yes, he's propped up, he's a puppet, and he probably is brainwashed to a certain degree of his own you know, own superiority. That in there, just that ego there makes him a wild card. Uh, I mean, if it ever comes to the point where China doesn't need North Korea anymore, well, North Korea is going to throw a tantrum, and they are going to nuke anybody and everybody. So that can happen. Would that spark off a World War III? Well, it depends on how smart the North Koreans would be. For example, all they would have to do is not nuke China, but say nuke Taiwan, nuke South Korea, and pull in the states. And then once the states are in there, well, then China gets into it automatically. It's that domino effect. It's that. This is why this guy, if you're looking at it from a globalist point of view, of course, no war would ever come out of it. But the problem is there's other factions. Do you really think the Muslim Brotherhood cares about money? They don't. They care about power. They care about brainwashing people. They care about that stuff. So when you put these people in power in the Middle East, at first it'll appear to be legit, but as we've seen with Morsi, it wasn't. So eventually they're going to get the wrong guy in there, which will be kind of the right guy to put the wheels spinning. And eventually you're going to get a guy that's the same with some of these jihadists. They're not going with the idea of, they're going with the idea of a total different belief system. One of them gets, and nukes are not really that hard to get, if you really think about it. That's why they get banned. Why would they ever even bother? They do trade with China all the time, for example. Okay? Why would they even bother building a nuke when they can just say, okay, China, instead of paying us in gold for the oil this month, give us uranium. We'll make our own, or just give us a nuke. I mean, we've already had, a couple of years ago, 2008, 2009, guess what? North Korean ships got intercepted with, ballistic, or missiles on them going to Iran. So, I mean, this stuff is out there, so it's just a matter of time. I mean, there's over 140,000 nukes on the planet. Those are your odds. And many of them unaccounted for. So that it's not something, like, again, it's not predictable. There's a lot. I do feel that there will be a couple of nukes going off. And people will probably say, well, nuclear warfare will never happen. It already has. What are you talking about? What do you mean it would never happen? Nagasaki, Hiroshima, it already happened. Oh yeah, but now we know what the effects are. They knew what the effects are back then. What the Manhattan Project, they learned a lot from the Manhattan Project. There was nobody that survived that testing. 3 Mile Island, they learned all about that. There's been over 1,200, or probably closer to 2,200 now, declassified nuclear tests that have been done on this planet. Okay, some above ground, some below ground, some even in outer space. Okay, setting them off is no big. And even at that, that sounds like a lot, but it's not that detrimental to the human race. Every time one goes off, it is a lot of pollution, sure. But what I'm talking about with a thermonuclear war is the problem is that you're going to run into, okay, is that too many are going off at once into populated areas, meaning it'll devastate life. Look at Fukushima right now. Japan has been basically nuked 3 times. You know what I mean? I don't know how much more they can take, but people somehow survive. But if they were to take, say, 10 hits at once, 20 hits, 30 hits, of course no one would survive. And that's any country, The Ohio-class submarines that are out there, okay, 14 of the 18 Ohio-class strategic nuclear submarines, boomer submarines, are in, surrounding China. One submarine crashes into another submarine, you get a Kursk-type incident, you never know. A submarine captain could say, just launch it, we're going down anyway. Again, there's madman at the helm. So to think that, that the elites are so in control that they can have wars and not let it get too far out of control, well, there's just way too many wild cards, because you have to enter in the rogue factions, you have to enter in the crazies, it's all lunacy when you really think about it. They're all mad. And then there's just the nihilists. Think about it. We have such a nihilist culture. Kids are evil. Don't have kids. Stuff like that. One-child policies. Everything's, a me-centered society. The narcissism is there. The psychopaths are there. Eventually, and most psychopaths seek out places of power. You're going to get your Emperor Nero, and when you do, you're going to get. So why is he not right? That's the thing. Is his argument is very, very logical. And you know, the guy who posted the question from this guy, I don't know who the guy did the debate. I'll have to watch it after. But the answer is not yes or no, because we don't know until it happens. The answer is it can. And if we go by history being over 25,000 recorded wars in history, I mean, almost in every aspect of history, almost all weapons designed for the period get used at some point. So, in the Bronze Age, we used spears and stones and stuff like that, and that was used. In the birth of the gunpowder age, we used cannons. We used it. In the birth of the nuclear age, we already have used nuclear weapons. That was the atomic age. Now we're into the thermonuclear age, which an atom bomb versus a a neutron bomb versus a is different. So you got your thermonuclear war, which is way more powerful. I mean, for the size of like the Manhattan Project, the little boy and fat man, they didn't put out hardly. They're just a firecracker, and you go from that was I think what 1 megaton, or was it not 1 megaton? Yeah, 1 megaton, and then now they're in the kilotons, and it's bigger. So differences like, a million sticks of dynamite versus 50 million sticks of dynamite going off at once. It's just, it's scary. So, hydrogen bombs versus atom bombs, like that. That's, these things get used at some point. Who's going to use it? Will India and China or Pakistan nuke each other? I mean, Pakistan and India have been shooting at each other for the past couple of months. Not as bad as it was back in the 1990s, but I always thought, especially back in the 90s, I thought for sure Pakistan and India were going to wipe each other off the map. They probably still will. They hate each other. But with China, I mean, now China's in on this, threatening India. Again, these are wild cards. They might do trade, but there's other factors in. Because it's not the people that are doing trade are just in it for the money, but the people that are, trying to knock off the other guy could escalate. I mean, look, Taiwan, okay, two B-52s in my last World War III update. Two B-52s flew through the new, disputed Chinese airspace. Okay, since then, Japan has done it, and guess what? Taiwan has done it, and that as of today. So you're just getting that escalation. It's a Cold War. It escalates. It will get to a brink level. And we've been on the brink of thermonuclear war so many times in history that we know of. There's, it's just a matter before one of the delusional ones hit the button. And then, of course, all the other rogue factions, the terrorists and stuff. If 9/11 could happen, a suitcase bomb, dirty bomb, all that stuff could happen very, very easily. So, because just to factor in that it's only the elites that are going to possibly fight a war. Well, there's rogues in there. So, So I don't think it's an easy answer that you could just say yes or no for sure. But to me, I haven't seen anything since 2010, the signing of the NDAA, that has moved us away from a thermonuclear war. We're moving closer. Will it it's going to happen when it happens. So there's nothing we can do about that. All we can do is prepare, and try to survive it. But that's the grim, because it's not really a prediction of when it's going to happen. It's that here's the world events. People get into crazy, like, I don't know what you would call it, but if you look at like all these genocides and stuff, people get into that mindset where they can just wipe out people and they're dehumanized. We've seen this in Kosovo, we've seen it in Sarajevo, we've seen it in World War II, we've seen it all over the place. We're even seeing it still today in African countries. We see it in the Middle East all over the place. I mean, how many Christians had their heads cut off the other day? What, 18 of them? You know what I mean? A bunch of them shot in the head. So, I mean, like, this is just kind of one of those things. There are people that are that far gone that to them, they're madmen, they're insane. It wouldn't matter. Because they're death cults, they wouldn't care how many people they killed. So you have to factor that in. So, I that's the reality, is that we're dealing with a lot of insane people. Eventually, one of them is going to get the opportunity. That's about it. That's pretty much why I push up all the things. Just think about it. You're going to have a Taiwanese fighter jet get shot down by China, a Chinese, and China will eventually, because you got to understand, okay, right now they're flying, the Americans have flown B-52s through the airspace. So Japan says, well, we can do that too. So Japan does it. Now Taiwan's going to do it. Okay, so what you're going to see is they're going to probe in further and further and further. And eventually you're going to have, airplanes flying around in the sky, and you'll get, the best incident I can use in history is Kursk. The Kursk, because if you know the history of the Kursk, it was basically pretty much, although they won't officially say it, I've seen a little bit of video footage, and yes, the Americans sunk the Kursk. The story of the Kursk is the Kursk crashed, or a French submarine crashed into the Kursk. They figured the French submarine was crippled. They figured that the Kursk was going to open fire on it. They had to make a quick decision, so the American submarine sunk this. This all took place underwater. Had this been warships on the top, in the same kind of escalation, it would have triggered World War III right away. And that is what will lead us to a thermonuclear war. And you have to understand, they don't just launch one nuke for nuke. It's when they launch one, they launch everything. That's the world global plan for nuclear strike is all-out launch. When they launch on their enemies, they launch on the enemy's allies. Therefore, you launch, everybody launches. They launch, you might as well kill all the people you hate too. You see what I mean? It's a megalomania of insanity. It's there, whatever, It's just there. It's completely bizarre. But that's about the most honest answer I can give on that. Again, people think, when do you think it's going to happen? Well, we don't know. You just got to follow the world events. You got to keep your eyes open. And you can see it escalating. I mean, Taiwan, this is 4 days in a row now that different nations have been flying through, China's been asserting its power, and now what you're seeing is a pushback. So once you got a pushback, well, China's got to it's a pissing contest. They got to one-up it, right? So anyway, I'll leave it at that. So rate, subscribe. If you have any comments, I thank you for your posts, and but I just thought I'd get that question. Okay, hi and welcome. I'm just going through some of my emails here. Sometimes I get emails from people, and they ask questions, what do they think about World War III, when it's going to happen, and stuff like that. And I always say it's going to be a wild card, flash in the pan thing. It's impossible to predict because of so many variations going on. So I guess somebody wrote a really good question. And this was a debate. I didn't watch the debate here, but I'm just going with the question that was posed here, I guess. Question, will there be a World War III? Answer, battle. I don't know who put this answer, but battles, yes. War, no. There will be skirmishes, genocides in African countries, honor killings in Islamic countries. The U.S. bunting its nose into the Middle East, civil wars within countries, etc. But there will be no World War III. Countries are too interconnected because of imports, exports, trade, and most importantly, multinational corporations. Most large countries are aware of effects of nuclear warfare and will refrain from mutual assured destruction. The smaller countries that don't seem to have that awareness, North Korea, Iran, will continue posturing, but will be allowed to mobilize by a global community. Will not be allowed to mobilize by a global community. Then the follow-up question, if that's what the other guy's saying, he goes, if this guy isn't right about World War III, why is he not? This is the question to me. Otherwise, is your position simply, let's bear in mind even the worst possibility of our mental and practical persuasions or precautions? Okay, so this is fair enough. Is he right or is he wrong? Well, I'm not saying he's right or he's wrong. I'm saying if I were to give you a date and time, I wouldn't believe me. Why? Because there's too many variables. What he is saying is there's no possibility, chance, so to speak, because of trade. Well, if that was the case, World War I shouldn't happen, World War II shouldn't happen, the Boer War shouldn't happen. All that stuff always comes back down to trade, territory, and it always usually comes down to money. Almost every one of them comes down to money. North Korea shouldn't have happened. Vietnam shouldn't have happened. Because there is trade, maybe not directly countries, but there's countries that have mutual. Let's look at what's going on right now with Ukraine. Behind the scenes, if you were to, this whole thing over the euro, and I don't have a formed opinion on it, I think Ukraine is right now in a rock and a hard place.